There are some topics that people avoid not because they are unimportant, but because they are too close to home, and this is one of them. The decision to cut ties with family is not something anyone wakes up excited to do. It is not impulsive. It is not dramatic. It is slow, quiet, and almost always arrives after years of hoping things would change. So why does this topic matter so deeply? Because millions of people around the world are sitting right now in rooms full of family, yet feeling completely alone. They are smiling at dinners they don't want to be at. They are nodding along to conversations that dismiss their pain. They are carrying guilt for simply wanting to breathe, and no one talks about it. Society calls it loyalty, but Jung saw it differently. He saw it as sleep. And this topic matters because waking up is terrifying when you think you are the only one awake. Here is something strange about human nature. We love stories of people who endure. We admire those who stay, who forgive, who keep showing up no matter how much it costs them. But the moment someone stops enduring, we shift. Suddenly they are cold. Suddenly they are ungrateful. Suddenly they are the villain of a story they never wanted to be in. Society has a label ready for everyone who walks away from family. You will hear words like selfish, dramatic, heartless. And the worst part? Most of the people using these labels have never had to make this choice themselves. They speak from the outside, from intact tables and predictable holidays. They do not know what it is like to dread a phone call. We do not know what it is like to feel your stomach tighten at the sound of a familiar voice. But Jung knew. And he said, those who are judged the harshest are often the ones who pay the highest price just to be real. Most people look at someone who cuts ties with family and see only the separation. They see distance, silence, absence, but Carl Jung looked through an entirely different lens. He did not see someone who stopped loving. He saw someone who finally stopped lying. Jung understood something that most of society refuses to accept. Family is not automatically sacred simply because it shares blood. Sacredness is built, not inherited. And when a family builds itself on control disguised as care, on silence disguised as respect, on guilt disguised as loyalty, that family is no longer a sanctuary. It is a system, and systems do not want members who question them. They want members who maintain them. And when Jung looked at the one who leaves, he did not see a traitor. He saw the only one brave enough to name the truth that everyone else agreed to ignore. Carl Jung gave us a powerful idea. He said that families do not just share a house, a name, or a history. They share something invisible. He called it the family unconscious. Think of it like this. Every family has rules that were never written down. Every family has emotions that are never spoken aloud. Every family has secrets buried so deep that even the people keeping them have forgotten they exist. This is the unconscious. It is not in any textbook. It is not taught in any school, yet every child born into a family breathes it in like air. They learn what can be said and what must be swallowed. They learn which feelings are welcome and which ones get you labeled difficult. And they carry this unconscious with them into adulthood, into their own relationships, into their own parenting. Unless one day someone decides to wake up. We all know we inherit eye color, height, maybe even our temperament, but Jung said we inherit something far heavier. We inherit unfinished pain. A grandfather who never learned to cry passes down silence. A grandmother who never felt safe passes down vigilance. A father who was never validated passes down rage. And here is the cruel part. These wounds do not arrive with warning labels. They arrive disguised as personality. You are not anxious. You are just sensitive. You are not angry. You just have a temper. You are not exhausted. You just need to try harder. But Jung saw clearly, what you are carrying is not entirely yours. It was handed to you before you had words, before you had choices, before you even knew you were being handed anything at all. And recognizing this is not about blame. It is about finally understanding why you have been so tired for so long. In almost every unconscious family, there is one child who arrives wired differently. While others laugh along, they notice the tension beneath the laughter. While others change the subject, they feel the weight of what was just avoided. Jung observed this pattern deeply. He saw that these children are not born with a flaw. They are born with a different kind of antenna. They pick up frequencies the rest of the family has learned to block out: a raised eyebrow, a sudden silence, a sentence left unfinished. Others do not hear it, but this child feels it in their chest, and because they feel what others refuse to feel, they are labeled too emotional, too difficult, too much. The family does not realize that this child is not the source of the discomfort. They are simply the only one honest enough to admit the room is cold. Here is the painful irony. The child who feels everything is often the one who tries the hardest to please everyone. They sense the fragility of the family, so they work to hold it together. They absorb tension. They apologize first. They make themselves small so others can feel big. Yet somehow, they still become the problem. Why? Because their very presence is a reminder that something is off, a reminder that everyone else has made peace with pretense. Jung understood this dynamic clearly. The family does not hate this child. They fear them. Not because the child is dangerous, but because the child is awake. And in a system built on sleep, wakefulness is always seen as an attack. So the family does what all systems do to protect themselves. They label the one who sees clearly as the one who cannot see straight. When you grow up as the different one, you learn a dangerous strategy. You believe that if you just try harder, if you just give more, if you just become smaller, quieter, more convenient, you will finally belong. So you pour yourself into the family system like water into a cracked vessel. You forgive without apology. You show up even when it costs you. You silence your own voice to protect their peace. But here is the trap Jung wanted you to see. The vessel was never meant to hold you. No amount of effort will make a system that runs on denial suddenly embrace truth. No amount of love will transform people who confuse control with care. You do not belong because they are incapable of truly seeing you, and that was never your failure. It was their limitation. But you spent years believing it was your fault. Jung said something that changes everything when you hear it for the first time. He said, the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. Read that again. He was not saying conflict is bad. He was saying conflict is the gateway. Most families spend their entire lives avoiding conflict. They sweep, they silence, they pretend. But Jung understood that unspoken conflict does not disappear. It calcifies. It becomes the wall between people. And the child who finally speaks, who finally names the tension, who finally refuses to pretend that child is not destroying the family, they are offering it a chance to heal. But here is the tragedy. Most families are not ready to accept that offer. To the child who brings the conflict becomes the one who is exiled for it, not because they were wrong, but because they were early. We are raised on movies and novels that teach us the breaking point is a dramatic explosion, a slammed door, a scream, a final word shouted across a room before someone walks out forever. But Jung knew better. The real breaking point is almost never loud. It is quiet. It is ordinary. It is Tuesday. Someone says the same dismissive sentence they have said 1,000 times before, and for the first time you do not feel anger. You do not feel sadness. You do not feel anything except a strange, cold clarity. You realize they are never going to change, not because they cannot, but because they do not want to. And in that moment, you are not reacting to what they just said. You are finally accepting what they have always been. That is the breaking point, not the wound. The surrender to the truth you spent years running from. A woman once came to Jung's student describing her father. For 34 years, she had waited for him to see her. She earned awards he never acknowledged. She built a life he never asked about. She forgave birthdays he forgot and promises he broke. Then one evening, she called to share news of a promotion. On the other end of the line, there was silence. Then her father said, "That's nice. But your cousin just had a baby. Now that's something real." She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply said goodbye, hung up the phone, and sat in her kitchen as the sun went down. Later she said, "I finally understood. I was not his daughter. I was just an audience he never applauded." That was her final straw, not the cruelty. The realization that she had spent 34 years clapping for a man who never once clapped for her. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. This is what Jung called the irreversibility of awareness. It is not a choice. It is not something you decide to believe or unbelieve depending on the day. It is a door that closes behind you the moment you walk through it. Before awareness, you could still hope. You could still explain away their behavior. You could still tell yourself that maybe next time will be different. But after awareness, that door is sealed. You now know that their cruelty was not a mistake. It was a pattern. Their indifference was not a busy season. It was a choice. Their inability to love you was not because you were unlovable. It was because they were incapable. And you can never go back to not knowing this. You can grieve it, you can rage against it, you can wish it were different, but you cannot unknow it. And that is both the heaviest and the freest truth you will ever carry. You would think that after years of pain, after finally choosing yourself, relief would arrive first, but it doesn't. Guilt arrives first. It crashes into you before you even have time to breathe. Why? Because guilt was installed long before you ever decided to leave. Every family meal where you swallowed your truth installed a wire. Every time you apologized for things that weren't your fault installed another. Every sentence that began with, "After everything we've done for you," wove itself into your nervous system. Jung understood this clearly. Guilt is not a sign you did something wrong. It is a sign you were trained to believe your own survival is a betrayal. The guilt you feel is not yours. It is the family's voice still living inside your head, and it will not leave quietly. It will scream that you are selfish, that you are ungrateful, that you are destroying something sacred. But here is what Jung would ask you. Was it sacred, or was it just familiar? They never needed weapons. They had sentences. "You've changed," as if growth is an insult. "I guess I was just a terrible parent." A sentence designed not to ask forgiveness, but to demand you provide it. "No one else in this family has a problem with me." Translation: your pain is invalid because others have learned to tolerate what you cannot. Family is family, perhaps the most effective prison ever built. 4 words that require you to erase yourself in the name of loyalty. Jung saw these sentences clearly. He recognized them not as communication but as control, disguised as conversation. They are not meant to understand you. They are meant to collapse you back into the role they assigned you. And the cruelest part, they work. Even after you leave, these sentences echo. Even in silence, you hear them. Even in peace, they find you. Not because they are true, but because they were repeated so often, they became indistinguishable from your own thoughts. Jung said something that should be taught to every child raised in an unconscious family. He said, "The shadow is not yours to carry alone." What he meant is that guilt in these families is never truly personal. It is inherited. It is transferred. It is passed down like an heirloom no one wants, but everyone is too afraid to refuse. Your mother's guilt about abandoning her own dreams becomes your guilt about disappointing her. Your father's guilt about his own failures becomes your guilt about not making him proud. You are not carrying your mistakes. You are carrying theirs. And here is what Jung wanted you to understand. You can set it down, not through cruelty, not through rejection, but through recognition. This guilt was never yours to begin with. It was handed to you before you had the strength to refuse it. And now that you are awake, you have the right to say, "I will carry this no further. This is where it stops. This is where it ends." Here is a truth that surprises many people. Leaving your family while your chest is still on fire with hatred is not freedom, it is just relocation. You have changed your address, but not your sentence. Because hatred is not the opposite of love, it is the other side of the same chain. Both keep you thinking about them. Both keep you reacting to them. Both keep you defined by them. Jung saw this clearly. He said, what you resist not only persists but grows. When you leave out of hatred, you are still in relationship with them, just a negative one. You still wake up replaying their words. You still imagine proving them wrong. You still hope they will one day regret losing you. That is not liberation, that is litigation. You are still prosecuting a case they have already dismissed. True freedom is not needing them to admit what they did. True freedom is not needing them to miss you. True freedom is when their voice no longer determines your direction. Not because you defeated them, but because you finally stopped fighting. Let me tell you about a man who reached out to us after watching a similar video. He left his father at 28. His father had been violent, manipulative, and had never once apologized for anything. So this man left, and for years, he built an entire life around proving his father wrong. He became successful just to shove it in his father's face. He worked harder, earned more, climbed higher, all to prove he was better. But one day, sitting alone in his expensive apartment, he had a terrible realization. His father was still running his life, not through control anymore, through opposition. Every decision he made was still about his father. Every goal was still measured against his father. He hadn't escaped. He had just switched from being a victim to being a prosecutor. Same obsession, different costume. Jung would say, that is not freedom. That is just hatred wearing a new mask. And hatred, no matter how justified, is still a chain. We grow up believing freedom looks like a slammed door, a final word, a dramatic exit. But Jung knew that real freedom is almost invisible. It does not announce itself. It does not seek witnesses. True freedom is the Tuesday afternoon when you realize you have not thought about them in 3 days. It is the quiet moment when someone mentions family and your chest does not tighten. It is the discovery that you no longer rehearse conversations you will never have. True freedom is not winning an argument that lasted decades. It is no longer needing to argue at all. It is not proving you were right. It is no longer needing them to admit you were right. It is when their voice becomes distant, not because you silenced it, but because you simply stopped tuning in. Jung described this as the final stage of individuation, not separation, indifference, not the indifference of coldness, the indifference of completion. You are no longer orbiting their gravity. You have your own axis now. You spin on your own center, and that is freedom no one can take from you. Jung gave this journey a name. He called it individuation. It sounds like a complex psychological term, but its meaning is simple. Individuation is the process of becoming who you actually are beneath everything you were told to be. It is stripping away the roles assigned to you before you could speak. The peacekeeper, the achiever, the invisible one, the one who never complains. These are not your true self. These are survival costumes, and individuation is the slow, often painful work of taking them off, not all at once, not dramatically, one thread at a time. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop performing happiness you do not feel. Jung believed this was the highest human calling, not wealth, not status, not approval, but the courage to become your authentic self. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who they needed you to be, not who fear made you, not who guilt shaped you into, who you actually are. And the discovery is this: that person was always there, just waiting, just buried, just quiet, but never gone. No one prepares you for the emptiness. You expect relief, you expect peace, you expect the weight to lift the moment you walk away. But instead, silence arrives, and in that silence, something unexpected happens. You feel hollow, not because you miss them, not because you regret your choice, but because your entire identity was built around surviving them. You knew who you were in opposition to them. You were the daughter who kept trying. You were the son who never gave up. You were the one who held everything together. But now, without them as your reference point, you look in the mirror and realize you do not know who you are. What do you actually like? What do you actually believe? What do you actually want? If no one is watching, if no one is judging, if no one is expecting, who are you? Jung called this not a crisis, but a clearing. The emptiness is not a void, it is fallow ground, soil waiting for new seed. You are not empty because something was taken from you. You are empty because you finally have room to grow something that is truly yours. Jung had a beautiful name for the emptiness after leaving. He called it creative solitude. Most people mistake it for depression. They feel the quiet and assume something is broken, but nothing is broken. You are not falling apart, you are shedding. Creative solitude is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. It is not a sickness. It is a season. In this season, you are not meant to produce. You are not meant to perform. You are not meant to have answers. You are meant to sit in the silence and listen. What do you hear? Not their voice, not their expectations, not their judgments. For the first time, you hear something underneath all of that, a whisper. Your own voice, quiet, rusty, unsure, but yours. That whisper is not depression. It is your soul finally getting a word in after decades of being talked over. Let it speak. Even if it stutters, even if it's slow, even if it says nothing at all, just let it be heard. Here is something Jung understood that most people get wrong. Seeing your family's wounds does not require you to excuse their behavior. You can understand why your father was cold without accepting the coldness. You can recognize your mother's history without letting her history become permission for her cruelty. Jung believed that consciousness is not forgiveness. It is simply clarity. You see them now, not as monsters, not as villains, but as people who were also wounded, also trapped, also asleep. This does not erase what they did. It does not rebuild what they broke. It does not restore what they took from you, but it releases you from something heavier than anger. It releases you from the need to keep fighting them in your head. You are not saying they deserve your compassion. You are saying you deserve your peace, and peace does not require their apology. It only requires your acceptance of what was, what is, and what will never be. Jung said something that haunts me in the best way. He said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." What did he mean? He meant that the people who wound us are often mirrors, not excuses for their behavior. Good mirrors of what we haven't yet faced in ourselves. You see your father's rage and hate it, but do you recognize it in your own impatience? You see your mother's control and despise it, but do you feel it in your own need to manage everything? This is not blame, this is inheritance. And Jung believed that the moment you recognize these disguised versions of yourself is the moment you gain the power to choose differently. You are not doomed to become them, but you cannot become free of them until you recognize them living in you, not as destiny, as visitors. unwelcome visitors can be shown the door. This is not about forgiving them. It is about freeing yourself from becoming them. This is the part Jung wanted you to understand most of all. Your leaving is not just personal, it is ancestral. You are not only saving yourself, but you are closing a wound that has been bleeding for generations. Your grandfather's silence, your grandmother's tears, your father's rage, your mother's anxiety, all of it flowed down through the bloodline looking for someone to finally stop it. And here you are, not because you are stronger, but because you are more awake. Every time you choose honesty over pretense, you are ending something. Every time you refuse to pass down the guilt, the control, the emotional starvation, you are severing a chain. Jung believed that the greatest heroism is not slaying dragons, it is breaking cycles. It is being the one who says, "This ends with me. My children will not carry what I carried. My body will not pass down what was passed to me." That is not selfishness. That is sanctification. You are not walking away from family. You are walking toward something they never found, and you are leaving a trail for anyone after you who also wants to find it.
You spend so long afraid of the loneliness that you forget to ask what comes after it. And Jung wanted you to know something does come after. The loneliness does not last forever. It is not your final destination. It is the corridor you walk through to reach a room you have never entered before. And when the loneliness finally lifts, what replaces it is not excitement or euphoria. It is something quieter, something deeper. It is presence. You stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. You stop scanning rooms for threat. You stop measuring your words before you speak. You realize one day that you are simply living, not performing, not surviving, not proving, just living, and it feels ordinary. That is the miracle. Not fireworks, not triumph, just ordinary Tuesday peace, the kind of peace that people from healthy families have always known. But for you, it is hard-won, it is earned, it is sacred, and it was worth every mile of the loneliness you walked through to reach it. No one prepares you for the small miracles. They are not dramatic, they do not make headlines, but they are the true evidence that you are healing. It is the moment you hear your phone buzz and your chest does not tighten. It is the holiday when you realize you are not dreading December. It is the conversation where someone asks about your family and you answer without your voice trembling. These are not small things. These are psychological miracles. Jung understood that healing does not arrive as a single dramatic event. It arrives in droplets, in inches, in ordinary afternoons when you suddenly notice you have been at peace for 3 hours and you did not even realize it. You are not waiting for the big breakthrough anymore. You are collecting quiet victories. A boundary you held without guilt, a memory that came and went without pain, a Sunday that belonged entirely to you. This is what healing looks like, not a roar, 1,000 small exhales. Each one proof that you are returning to yourself, each one sacred, each one earned. Here is something beautiful Jung observed. People who have done the deep work of individuation often become the gentlest among us, not because they were born soft, but because they have seen their own darkness, they have sat with their own rage, they have faced their own capacity for destruction, and they have chosen differently. Jung said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." The individuated person has roots in both places. They know what it is to wound and be wounded, to betray and be betrayed, to abandon and be abandoned. And because they know this, they do not rush to judge, they do not rush to label, they do not rush to exile. They have been the exile, so they build tables instead of walls. They offer patience they were never given. They become the safe person they once searched for and could not find. This is not weakness. This is the strength that has been tested by fire, and gentleness when it comes from this place is not fragility, it is the highest form of power. We make a mistake when we call chosen family rebellion. It sounds like we are collecting replacements out of spite, like we are building an army to prove our blood family wrong. But Jung saw something else entirely. Chosen family is not rebellion, it is recognition. You do not choose people because they are better than your family. You choose them because they see you, not the role you play, not the performance you learned, you. And in that seeing, something ancient in you finally relaxes. You realize you were never too much. You were just in the wrong room. You were never broken. You were just surrounded by people who could not hold your truth. Chosen family does not replace what was lost. They prove that you were always capable of connection, that love was never the problem. The conditions attached to it were the problem. And here, in this new room, there are no conditions, just presence, just recognition. Just the quiet miracle of being known without having to explain. That is not rebellion. That is homecoming. Your family taught you that love leaves. that if you are too difficult, too emotional, too honest, people walk away. So you learned to perform, to shrink, to silence yourself in advance just to keep people close. Then someone comes along who does not leave, not because you performed well enough, not because you earned them, not because you were convenient. They simply stay. And at first, you do not trust it. You wait for the other shoe to drop. You wait for them to realize you are too much, but the dropping never comes. The leaving never happens. Jung understood this is not just kindness. It is corrective. Every day they stay, they are dismantling a lie that was installed in you before you could speak. The lie that you are unworthy of steady love. They do not heal you with grand gestures. They heal you with presence, with consistency, with the radical act of remaining. And one day you realize you are not waiting anymore, not for the apology, not for the abandonment, not for the other shoe. You are simply here, and so are they. That is the healing, not fireworks, just staying, just someone who proves the old story was wrong about you. If you are still here, still listening, still reading these words, I want to ask you something, not to pressure you, not to demand an answer, just to place a question gently in your hands. What kept you here? What part of you recognized something in these words and refused to look away? Is it the part that still hopes your family will one day see you? Is it the part that grieves what never was? Or is it the part that already knows what you need to do but has been waiting for permission? Jung believed that the soul speaks in whispers long before it speaks in shouts. This is a whisper, not telling you what to choose, not telling you what is right, just asking you to be honest with yourself, not with them, with yourself. What do you actually need? Not what you were taught to need, not what guilt demands you need. What do you actually deeply, quietly need? You do not have to answer today. You do not have to answer aloud, but do not pretend you did not hear the question. Your soul has been waiting a long time for you to ask it. There is a part of you that has never belonged to your family. Jung knew this. He called it the self, not the self your parents shaped, not the self that learned to survive, but the self that existed before any of that. The part of you that arrived on this earth with its own blueprint, its own longings, its own truth. This is the part that felt wrong in rooms where everyone else seemed comfortable. The part that refused to laugh at jokes that weren't funny. The part that cried at cruelty no one else acknowledged. Your family probably called this part difficult, too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But Jung called it something else. He called it the most awake part of you, and here is what he wanted you to know. That part is not broken. It is not a flaw to be fixed. It is not a phase to outgrow. That part is your soul's compass. It has been pointing you toward freedom your entire life. You just weren't taught to trust it. But you can learn, starting now, starting with this breath, starting with this truth. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. I need you to hear this clearly. This video is not a push toward the door. It is not a manifesto urging you to cut ties. Jung never prescribed leaving as the answer for everyone. What he prescribed was consciousness, and consciousness does not come with a single instruction. For some, consciousness means staying, but staying differently, no longer absorbing, no longer performing, no longer hoping for what will never come. You stay because you choose to stay, not because guilt demands it, not because fear traps you, but because you have seen the truth clearly and still decide this is where you belong. For others, consciousness means leaving, not out of hatred, not out of revenge, but out of the quiet recognition that you cannot heal in the same room where you were wounded. Both paths are valid, both require courage, both carry grief. His gift was helping you see that there is a door at all. What you do with that seeing is yours alone, and whatever you choose, choose it awake. Near the end of his life, Jung was asked if he believed in God. He paused for a long moment. Then he said something remarkable. He said, "I don't believe. I know." He was not speaking only of God. He was speaking of everything he had spent a lifetime uncovering, the unconscious, the shadow. You stop second-guessing your boundaries. You stop hoping they will change. You stop waiting for permission. You do not believe you are worthy of peace anymore. You know it, not because someone told you, not because a video convinced you, but because you walked through the fire. You sat in the emptiness. You rebuilt yourself from the ground up. And now you know, the same way Jung knew, not with arrogance, with quiet, unshakable certainty. You are exactly where you need to be. You are exactly who you need to be. You know. So here you are, standing at the door, hand raised, heart racing, unsure whether to knock one more time or finally turn away. And you have been standing here for years, maybe decades, afraid that if you leave, you will lose them forever, afraid that if you stay, you will lose yourself. He saw every soul standing at this threshold, frozen between guilt and freedom, and this is what he wanted you to know. Whatever you choose, choose it with both eyes open. Do not stay because you are afraid. Do not leave because you are angry. Make your choice from clarity, not reaction. From truth, not survival. And know this, the door does not lock behind you. Leaving is not permanent. Staying is not permanent. What is permanent is the cost of living a life that was never yours. So choose, not because the choice is easy, but because not choosing is still a choice. And you have spent long enough waiting for permission to live. You spent your whole life searching for home. You thought it was a house, a city, a person, a family dinner table where everyone finally sees you. But Jung knew the truth. Home is not a place. Home is not people. Home is not something you find. Home is something you become. You become the safe place you never had. You become the voice that says you are okay when everything inside you feels broken. You become the arms that hold your own grief. You become the witness who finally validates your own pain. And one day, you will realize something profound. You are not searching anymore, not because you gave up, but because you arrived. You are home. Not because the address changed, not because your family finally apologized, not because you found the perfect partner or the perfect community. You are home because you stopped outsourcing your belonging. You stopped waiting for someone else to hand you a key. You built the door yourself. You walked through it yourself. And on the other side, you found the only person who could ever truly save you, yourself. Whole, awake, home.